Hey family, we're back in our relationship series. Today we have Coach Faye and Taylor, some of your guys' small group leaders, and we're going to be just going over some relationship questions that you guys asked today. So we're really excited to get rolling. So Taylor, what's our first question?
All right. First question is, what is your biggest ick?
Your breath. So my biggest ick is smelly breath. I just can't deal with it. I would probably talk under my voice about it. Like, Lord, help me. But yeah, that is my biggest ick.
Definitely like garlic, onions.
Nasty.
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 Yeah, I would have to say mine is kind of like a two-faced thing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you're talking to someone, like, you know, it should be just, they should only be talking to you. Kind of like, you know, they should be nice to you with your family and with your friends. Or like, you know, if you're going to church, there's some places you shouldn't be going, and kind of just like staying true to your life. I think that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
Mine is flip-flops.
Gator toes.
Put the gators away.
Pack them up and ship them out.
Nasty. It just is like, I don't care. Like, I don't mind sandals, but flip-flops is just like, blech.
They kind of like click when you walk too. And
So the sandals with like the thing in the middle of the big toe.
Yeah. Yeah, no thanks. Just burn them.
good thing I have boots on today.
There you go. Got it covered.
That's
Cover up the gators.
All
right. Question number 2. How do you get into a healthy relationship?
I would say there's some different sets of boundaries you should set up right away. And I think like physical boundaries is kind of like something that is discussed maybe a little bit more, but also like emotional boundaries is important too. Yeah. I know for the guys in our first week of this series, Caleb touched about not like rushing everything, but also not like opening up everything too fast. Like you kind of have to build trust with that person, and you kind of like tell them more about yourself, and you know, like slowly learn versus like really just giving them everything like physically and emotionally. Right. I think really helps set boundaries for a healthy relationship.
Yeah. I would say like surround yourself with a good community of people that you want like a relationship with. Like don't go out to like, I don't know, as young adults, like a lot of people go out to like the bars and like things like that. And like, you're probably not going to find a great godly man or woman in that situation. Not that God, I don't know, couldn't work in that way, but surround yourself with good community, good friends, like build a good like foundation to start right off the bat with.
For sure. Yeah. I think like people that are older than you especially can give really good advice too. So kind of having like church elders that you trust or people like that can really go a long ways and telling you things that maybe you need to hear, because oftentimes when you're in a relationship, you know, you can't see some of the things that are happening. So if you know someone that's kind of like outside, they can kind of
So I agree with what Taylor said too as well. It's just a positive community is so important. And also you have to know what a healthy relationship looks like before, because that's something that's very important. Like, what does a healthy relationship looks like? And I think the best way to look at that is just the Bible. The Bible tells us all about the healthy relationships of being truthful, respect, humbleness, selfless. Like all those things are healthy relationships. So I think that's one I would say define a healthy relationship.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Next one. Is social media good for a relationship?
Faison, you ready?
Yeah, I was going to say, what you got?
With social media, does social media validate how much you are loved from your spouse or from your friends or anything like that? I think that's very important, because like sometimes in the society we live in today, we think that social media is so important to validate us how much how loved we are, how good of a life we have. And I know I always think about my relationship with Jesus. Jesus said he would bless me in my prayer room. Like all those things comes together with you just understand that, man, God is going to bless you privately, and people will see it as you walking around this world. It's not meant to be known and things like. It's a beautiful thing though too. Like, you know, sometimes post your spouse and whatever, your husband and things like that, but just making sure that you don't have to feel that social media validates how good your life is, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd also kind of touch on like your intention behind posting. Like, are you posting so everybody knows like that you hit that status, or that you are posting to brag almost, versus like posting to glorify God? I don't know. Just taking that minute to look at your heart and remember why you're posting or whatever. Yeah.
Definitely. It's easy to kind of like portray a fake life or a fake relationship.
Definitely.
I know I've seen, especially on Facebook with some older couples, a lot of really sappy posts and very quickly followed by a divorce because the posts were just kind of trying to prove like, oh, we love each other online. But, you know, you kind of have to look behind closed scenes, kind of like what Faye, you said about the prayer room. You know, it's like just like your relationship with God. Like, you know, you can look good in public at church, but are you really pursuing him in private too? And the same goes for your relationship. Are you really, you know, putting in the work to improve yourself and fix things about yourself and, you know, present things to God that you want him to help you refine and stuff out of your life? Like, are you doing those things behind closed doors too? Yeah. It's really important. And there's a lot of things you'll do to love someone that they will never see. Yeah. Like, kind of like, you know, you unload the dishwasher or whatever before you leave, and it's kind of like little acts of love that they'll never see, but those kind of like behind the scenes things go so far, and like you don't need to like validate them to your significant other either. Right.
Well, and even think of like how much stronger your relationship would be if you focused on all the things that like aren't postable, you know, versus the postable things. Good. And how much deeper your relationship would be, how much like you would truly care for that other person, and vice versa, than posting all the time on your story, like, look at me doing this or whatever.
Yeah, the ugly laughing and ugly crying
moments
are strong.
Yeah.
For sure. Oh, man. And I think it's too just of like, are your intentions when you're on social media is to glorify the King? I think that's so important. What are you using social media for? Is social media helping you to bring the gospel to people, or is social media bringing desires to you? Because that's something that's what we deal with now in all these social medias. It's horrible what you see on there. And if you look on your phone, how much you spend time on there, just imagine how much the enemy is trying to get you through all those sites of like TikTok or anything like that. So I think the main thing is being, how do you say this? Just being prepared on like not letting things get close to your spirit. So,
yeah,
for sure. I think just kind of mediating the usage in general, like, especially like even when you're single and stuff, you don't just want to like scroll your days away and scroll your life away. And then like when you're in a relationship, you should kind of like, you know, still have control over your social media uses in general. And I've seen kind of like Snapchat takes away some of like the excitement. Especially when you're going to hang out with that person that day and you kind of like snap them everything you're doing that day, and you've already talked about everything and you've already seen their face all day. And then you show up to see them and it's like, well, you know, this is what I already looked at and talked to all day. So I think it can take away if you're not kind of really like prepared and conscious and discerning what's right and wrong in that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. We starting off good. I love it.
This one says, I'm familiar with setting physical boundaries, but how do you set emotional boundaries?
Kind of touched on that a little bit, but really just like, I mean, it kind of goes the same for like friendships too. I mean, you need to watch in like any relationship, but it's like, you don't just want to be a person that like gives someone all your dirty laundry right away when you meet them. Like you can't, you know, and there are some things that you don't necessarily need to tell the other person. Like, you know, they can know who your ex is and like kind of how your relationship went and some stuff like that. But it's not like you need to show them pictures. Like for one thing, you probably shouldn't have them anymore. But you don't need to show them pictures and make them jealous and stuff and tell them stories of things you did, or like, you know, I got him flowers when I asked him out on this. Like some of those things you just keep to yourself and you know that they happen, but also, you know, you don't need to make the other person jealous and kind of overload them with your past emotions and stuff.
Definitely.
But with also like, still obviously they have to learn who you are. Like I know that's what Pastor Keith was talking about, the importance of marriage counseling. That really helps people to like learn who you are, like what your triggers are, and some different things like that can be really important. But obviously that's kind of like farther down the line. Like you wouldn't do marriage counseling in the first 6 months you're together.
Yeah.
And I think just with just emotional is being truthful to like what do you struggle with. I think that's so important. We try to carry this lifestyle like we're perfect, that we don't have any struggles, and that's what takes us away from like relationships of being honest. And then 4 months comes and now you just throw all this upon me. Like, I mean, it's okay to open up your heart, but like you said, be slow. Caleb said the best about this, just be slow with it, but understanding that it's okay to open up in a way so the person can know you and know the boundaries not to cross in those relationships things and those, like when you're taking that step in those ways. So
yeah, I also think to set emotional boundaries, like the Bible talks about, like taking every thought captive and not letting yourself like overthink, jump to conclusions. And obviously that's much easier said than done. But taking the time when you're having like a weak moment or like thoughts that are causing you to be anxious, like, and surrendering those to the Lord. And whether that be because you're starting a new relationship and you're like, oh my gosh, I love this person, like I wonder when we have kids and get married, like there's a point to be like, okay, that's like not setting a great emotional boundary because you're going way too far too fast, like even in your mind. And just remembering the things that the Bible tells us to think on, like what is pure and lovely, and how God intends our mind to be like this disciplined muscle, but that we also have to work on over a whole lifetime too. It's nothing that's like tomorrow I'm going to do this and now I never have to think about it again. So I think your mind is a huge, I guess, muscle, for lack of a better term, to use and strengthen to help set emotional boundaries.
Definitely, that's good.
Yeah. Sorry, people.
How do you know she's the one or he's the one?
Ooh. I love this question because I think of it as this. Do you see Jesus in that person, or do you see their appearance is something that's very important? Because we all have this thing of our ideal of who our person is and what we think is for us. But I think the main thing about this is do you see Jesus in that person? Does that person words of what they're saying to you make you start thinking of, you know, in cartoons where all the hearts start going out of anywhere, or is it the way the person walks that brings remembrance of Christ?
Yeah.
So I think that's very important to just understand. Like, you have to look into that person and see if Jesus is in that person.
Yeah.
Are the fruits of the Spirit coming out of that person, or it's just the same words that every man or woman have said to you in your past relationships? Because we're living in a society where men and women can tell you anything in the beginning. And that's why love is slow and relationships are slow too, because you can get sidetracked by just hearing words, but what are the actions behind it that leads you towards the kingdom instead of towards the world? So
that's really good.
Yeah, I think finding someone that will like pursue your faith with you is really important. Like, because that's just huge. Like, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, like you're a nerdy Christian guy, like that's weird, stuff like that. Well, maybe you think that's weird, but that means like I wouldn't want to live with you and, you know, I'm in marriage one day with you pulling me away from my relationship with God. Like, that's what's important to me. And I think I'm in a relationship right now where obviously I'm working on these things, taking things slow. So it's been a little over 6 months, but it's still like, you know, doesn't mean we're going to get married, doesn't mean we're going to have kids and all these things. But also I think what's special about this relationship versus other ones is how firm her identity was in Christ, like before I even met her, and she just knows who she is. And I think that's a huge part of really like being ready to deal with someone else's problems, you know, because like even I was talking to Pastor Noah today, there's a little problem at Epic, and he was like, you know, you're going to be working with people, and people have problems with you, and problems with the church, problems with things you say, problems with other people. And so, I mean, when you're living with someone else for that long and with that much like intimacy and stuff, it's going to be hard to deal with these problems. But the biggest thing I've seen is just making sure that it's you and your spouse versus the problem, no matter what it is. Because I've seen like a loss in a family, and then all of a sudden it's the girlfriend and the loss versus the boyfriend. And it's like, how is that supposed to work if you're attacking your significant other?
I would also touch on the fact of our culture as a whole really loves the whole like Cinderella story and fairy tales and your soulmate, and they make it seem like there's no way you wouldn't know he or she is the one. And I don't like think that God intends there to be one specific person, you know, and I'm not saying that he's got a plan for you to be married 5 times. That's not what I mean either. But I mean, like, there are, like, when you surround yourself in a godly community and have great Christian friends, like, you could have, like, 4 or 5 different friends that could, like give you potential for a very happy, like, Christ-filled, Christ-centered marriage, you know? And so it's finding those people who are like Jesus and who resonate the fruit of the Spirit. And like once they check off those like core things, like you know that like there's going to be hardships in life no matter what. One will never be better than the other. Yeah. You know? So it's about being wise in what you're looking for and knowing and trusting God in that process too, I think.
Yeah, I heard a good analogy by Josiah and Micah Keneally, and I don't need to share it all, but they shared that chemistry, they had 5 different things that laid out a healthy Christian relationship, and they had chemistry as the pinky, and so least important. But people focus on it way too much. Like, you can connect and have good connections with a lot of people. So I think like, the whole concept of like, there's only one person you could ever marry. Well, that means if one person had ever married the wrong person, that would upset the whole chain forever. So that doesn't
crazy.
One person, you screwed it up for all of us.
Ruined. Now none of us can get married.
That's funny. Let's see.
Next question.
That's the same question. How to challenge each one of you to live a godly life and push each other towards the Word of God.
Yeah, so how do you challenge each other? I like this one because I had a good example of this holiday season, you know, so it was, you know, a couple months ago, so it had been 4 months into the relationship or something, and I was really thinking about starting the Bible recap, which is just reading the Bible in a year, and I've loved it so far. I'm like 3 weeks ahead, so I think I'm like on day 70 because I couldn't wait to start. I was on fire. But I actually hit +2 and just ordered 3 when I ordered them on Amazon. Yeah. And I gave one to my little brother too, which I thought was good to try to motivate him in his faith. But then I also gave one to Audrey, and I just said, you know, like, I'm reading it this year and I really think you should too. Yeah. And, you know, with, like I said, her already having a strong identity, she was like, well, of course I want to read it in a year. And, you know, I'm like 3 weeks ahead, so it's not even like it's something we like talk about because we're in different places, and she's on a trip really far away right now, so it'd be hard to connect on it all the time anyways. But I know she's doing it in her daily morning devotions, and I think it's really awesome to see that she's willing to pursue the Word of God. And it was just a simple, you know, it was like $13 or something. And now she's going to read her whole Bible this year. Yeah. And I am too. So I think it's awesome.
Great. Man, I think challenging, I think this is just for if you're dating someone and just friendships as well, is who's going to take the first step. That's so important, like in any relationship, because if someone doesn't know Jesus, but they look at you and they can see Jesus in you, that gives them a step already. That they see something that they can have in the light of the body of it all, because you are walking in the steps of Christ. And so it's just about you, the way that you carry yourself, and are you pursuing it? Because a lot of times we can get into relationships or things like this, and we can want someone to come with us. And sometimes we will take, how do you say this? We will limit our relationship with Jesus because we're trying to drag someone with us. And that's when it can become scary. But a way to help someone is just you being like Christ. That's the easiest way I think of it is just you opening up your word, you praying, you being in a community, you doing those things so that you can encounter the relationship God has called for you, and that would just absorb to him as well, or her as well. So, yeah.
I think there's the cheesy Sunday school answer that, no, what's the answer? Jesus is always the answer. But I think in relationships, like, it is, you know, like if you're mad at your husband, Jesus is the answer. Like, if you're more like Jesus, you can solve that. You know, if your wife did something you don't like, she bought something you don't like, you know, and you read what Jesus says about what love is, you can really go a long ways. And so that cheesy little Jesus is the answer. But it is, I think in relationships, it holds a lot of truth and could really help fix a lot of those problems.
I'd also say like find fun ways to what's the word I'm looking for, like fun ways to do Jesus together, you know, like find joy in going to church together on Sunday morning, you know, make it fun. So maybe that means going to breakfast before, lunch after, or or going through, there you go, or both. Or like you're doing the Bible in a year, like not necessarily together, but like you're both doing it, you know, like find ways to make it fun. Like, do you enjoy journaling? Do you enjoy reading? Like find good books or different journaling prompts, you know, like find ways to keep each other accountable, but yet in your own lane of creativity and how to do it together, I think would help the, like, I don't know, balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think another thing is just talking about like what you see God doing in your life.
Yes.
That's a big one, because
your story.
She's been in college, so she had a friend that would have her window open at night, and she would hear us talking on the phone, and she would listen in a little bit to try to see if she could hear anything, whatever, drama, nosy, whatever. But all she learned was, she just said, well, I just learned that Audrey really has a heart for the Lord, because that was 95% of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
And so I think that went a long way for me, because then I can hear these things, and then I can also share them again.
Yeah.
And then that way they're kind of more in my mind, and throughout my day I'm thinking about, you know, like, what did God do today? What did I see today? What did I learn today?
Yeah.
And just like a really healthy way of like keeping those things fresh. Like, you know, you go on a trip, you know, a mission trip or whatever, you take some good notes, and like you never share them with someone again. But that can really be a good way to like just keep Jesus in the forefront, because like it's, if you're sharing about all that stuff that's going on in your life, and they are too, it can be really encouraging for both of you guys, because you can just see God moving, kind of like multiplied, because it's two people's lives that God is moving in. So
it's so beautiful. I love the verse of taste and see that the Lord is good. That's just a wonderful verse to me, just because when you taste God experiences, makes you more hungry. And that's the part of it all, is that when you have two people, if one person, like, that's why I say this, the part of taking that first step and you tasting the experience of God, it only makes you more hungry. Yeah. And that person's looking like, wow, this person is changing. Like, God has built light into us, and that's what attracts people. And so that's what I think was so creative about God, is that the light shines upon us when we accept him. And when we live by him and you embrace that, your skin shines. It does. I promise it does. And everyone's like, man, why are you this person? Why are you this person? Because I surrendered. Yeah. And I let Jesus, I accepted him. Seeking, I will give you more. And I kept seeking, and that's what happens. And that brings a challenge to the person that you want to be with, or that you're dragging from your friends or whatever, is, man, experience this for yourself. I promise you it's amazing. So I think that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Give God a real chance.
Yes. All right. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
Say eeny, meeny.
How do I get over heartbreak?
Ooh. I mean, if I go, it might sound very long, but, you know, I have experienced a heartbreak before, and I would tell you these things to get over heartbreak. First is accepting it. Sometimes it's so hard for us to accept those things, but understanding that, man, you know, when going through heartbreak, you need Jesus. That's the first thing, but you have to accept it and not numb your pain. A lot of times in our society, we go into this state of mind that we don't want to accept it, and so we go make worldly decisions to numb our pain, and that pain becomes an opportunity for the enemy to put you in a cave, and that cave becomes your comfortable spot, and then the cave becomes a prison cell, and then that prison cell becomes a tomb. So the enemy wants us to die in our emotions from the choices that we make from the heartbreak, and that is so scary. And then also, I would say, this right here, the community is so important when you're going through a heartbreak. The Bible says when the eye sees light, when the eye sees healthy, the body is full of light. But when the eye sees the eye sees unhealthy, the body is full of darkness. Yeah. And so when you put a community around you that's telling you God's promises, it's so beautiful. And it brings light to the body. So you have to start getting out of your comfort zone and experiencing things that God has called for you. And the third, is nature. We don't understand that healing comes when you going on a walk, going on a bike ride.
Yeah.
Like it's so beautiful how God is so creative. We were just talking about creativity last month, but God's creativity brings healing on a walk. If you ever look at when you going on a walk and you see these plants, and some of them probably are dying at that moment. But the thing about it's so funny, but when you keep going on that walk, it's a different season when that flower will grow.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes our life, that when we in that heartbreak, we have to understand that, man, this season I have to learn something. I might be broken,
Yeah.
but God will water me again and I will rise. Because that tomb that the enemy had me want, that the tomb that the enemy wanted me in, it was only one person defeated the tomb, and that was Jesus. And so Jesus lived in us. So I would say that.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, that's good. I think a big part, like you talked about accepting right away, I think
Yeah.
a big part of that is moving past it too.
Yeah.
I think I noticed in heartbreak that I would talk about it with my friends, which is good,
Mm-hmm.
until it was 3 months later, and I was talking about it with my friends every day still.
Yeah.
And it was like, I still can't believe this happened, and
Yeah.
all these things happened, and it's like, you can't just dwell on those things forever, on the negative forever.
Yeah.
Like at some point, it's good to talk about it. It's good to, let your emotions run its course. Like it's not good to listen to extremely depressing music for
No, not at
months
all.
on end like I did either. And like, it's good to feel it, but it's not good
Yeah.
to just get stuck in it forever. Like you said, like I really went into a tomb where every day I was like, man, I just can't believe it, and just talked and talked and talked.
Yeah.
And I think just moving past it, and also that goes with not communicating with them on a regular basis anymore, like unless you're 50 years old and you were married for 30 years, you had more life without them than you have with them.
Yeah.
If it's been a year or
That's
two,
good.
like it's really tough and it's not easy. And I'm not trying
Right.
to say that it's easy to break up.
Yeah.
It's still very hard, but
Mhm.
also you just have to leave that person behind. If you're still with them all the time and spending all this time with them and stuff, I've seen people get pulled back into relationships for 3 more years and on and off.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's like, well, now and then in the end, it didn't work out. And it's like, now you spent another 3
Right.
years with this person, all
Right.
because, 3 years ago, you didn't make the right decision to
Yeah.
Mhm.
just, let it be done and,
Mhm.
realize that like dating is there. So you figure
Yeah.
out, this isn't someone that I want to be married to.
Yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
like, it's good you figure that out. Like it's better than being married to someone that you don't want to be married
Yeah.
to. Cause
Yes.
Yeah.
that is not a good thing at all. So I think just, accepting it and really just moving past it and like understanding that there is more people out there,
Mhm.
because I think I had that in my head for a while too. I kind of was like, I don't know if you could, if there'd be another person out there for me. Well,
Yeah.
that's doubting God.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want to
Right.
doubt God on that. You can be
Yes.
like, oh, look at this generation. There's no one good left. They're all this,
Yes.
this and that.
Yeah.
Like, that's doubting God when you say that. So
Yeah.
I think just trusting in him and his timing goes a long ways.
Yeah. I also feel like it could be a really great time, like to help get over heartbreak, is like reignite like your passions and if you're creative and love doing art, or like you love going to the gym, like
Mhm.
use that to your advantage too, of like spend your time wisely, like reinvest into other girlfriends or your other guy, like girlfriends if you're a girl, guy friends if you're a guy, type of thing. Like surround yourself with the community and like be able to use that new found time like intentionally and
Mhm.
deepen your relationship with the Lord. Like singleness as like a not percentage, as a whole, like most people get married,
Yeah.
like it's a really unique season, and it's obviously not what you probably wanted or expected, having to like deal with heartbreak, but
Mhm.
it can be a really cool intentional time if you let it be.
Yeah. Just learn from the mistakes is a big
Yeah.
one, like you made
Yeah.
mistakes, but just learn and like accept that you made mistakes too,
Yeah.
like accept it's
Right.
over, and like
That's true.
accept like, wow, I did
Yep.
this wrong. Like that
Yeah.
was, that was dumb and bad.
Be able to be honest with yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And also don't like wish that you had done it differently.
Yes.
Like it ended
Yes.
for a
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
And
that's
also,
why our story is so important. It is. And I think as well, like we could say all these things are so perfect, but knowing God's word is so important.
Yeah.
Like God says he's close to the broken heart, and like God has a plan for us all. And I think one of the things that I want to talk about in just this question of our society is when you're going through a breakup, you have to delete the pictures and videos out of your phone.
Yeah.
The enemy used that towards you, because sometimes we get into this moment where we want to feel those emotions, so we go back into them. And then when the enemy have your emotions like that, I have seen it in society that you have start to go to Snapchat and go check their location.
Yeah.
You go check their story, and then now you're going into their Facebook and Instagram, seeing who liked their pictures. So now the enemy is keeping you captive to play
Yeah.
with your mind and make you start to assuming things. And so that's why I think it's so important with just friends as well, is because you can have a friend that say the person block you off that you can't see the story no more.
Right.
Now you asking your friend to go check his story.
Yeah.
And I say that's why it's important for friends, because the friend's supposed to say no and tell this person, like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to go to my house. We're going to go on a walk or something, and we're going to speak about God. We're going to speak about the promises over your life. We're going to get over the stages of healing over your life. And so that's why I think that friends matter in heartbreaks, because iron sharpens iron. And that's so important to me. So
Right.
And that's also why you can't ditch your friends
Yes.
when you get in a dating relationship.
Right. Because that relationship might not last.
And then
you walk back, what's up? No.
You're alive.
yeah. And you don't have to be the person that says no either. I
Yeah.
think I've accepted some friends after they've really rejected me too, which can also be hard, because it's
Yeah.
hard for those people, like, we were friends for 4 years, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you chose this girl over me for 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I'm still here for you, like in the
Yeah.
season of heartbreak. And I
Yeah.
think that goes a long way too. But yeah, make sure you don't just spend every waking moment that you
Right.
can with that person, because you never know what's going to happen.
That's
Yeah.
true.
You don't need to look at it from a negative standpoint.
Yeah.
But also you want friends when you're married too.
That's
Mhm.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Good stuff.
That was good. Yeah. Yeah. They gonna look at us and be laughing. We just all be smiling.
We're gonna
I
be
love
sitting in the watching it at Epic and just be like,
Yeah.
How do we forgive people who have hurt us in our past relationships? It says, I don't know how, and I don't want to forgive them for the hurt they caused me, but I know I have to.
I think knowing you have to is the biggest
Yes.
first step. And also, like I talked about, how everyone's human, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
everyone in their life is gonna make like unforgivable mistakes.
Yes.
Like, wow, that was really bad. We're in the season of life and it's not good. And then something else happens, like a loss of a family or a miscarriage or something. And then they do something that just pushes you way over.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, I can't even believe this, and then you can't let that snowball keep going of like, why did I marry this person? All these things.
Yeah.
Like, that's when like forgiveness is so important. And like the Bible like stresses it so much. It's
Right.
like when you're reading the scriptures, which is like, that's what I think is so cool about reading the Bible this year. But you see those repeating themes, and those are the things you want to remember. And forgiveness is one of those things that it's like,
Right.
you read through any of the book of the Bible,
Yeah.
and you're going to find forgiveness in it. So I think just remembering that, like, as hard as it is, you have to forgive, and because, Jesus forgave us. Like,
Yes.
imagine being God and looking at like earth right now, and you see all the evil things that like he directly tells everyone not to do, and even things that he tells us directly not to do that maybe we do sometimes.
Yeah.
And he forgives us way more than we could ever forgive
Right.
anyone
Yes.
else. And
Right.
so remembering that, like, we have to forgive to be forgiven.
Yeah.
Is,
Yeah. And remembering it's like not going to be easy. Like you have to choose it.
Yeah.
Like when you want to or when you don't want to, and like whether you should or not, like, and just speaking that over, like, I forgive them. Like, and eventually it's going to become easier and easier, and you're going to realize I don't even know when I forgave them, but it doesn't bother me anymore, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, remembering it's going to be hard.
I liked what Cindy said about like intentionally forgetting.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
you remember this? No, I intentionally forgot that.
Yes,
That's
yes.
pretty funny, but it's
Took it
true.
and threw it away.
Like, yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
gone. Like,
Yeah.
I forgot, like,
Yes.
that's casted as far as east is from the west,
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
Jesus does with our sins. Like,
Right.
I forgot. I don't know what
Yep.
you're talking about.
Yep.
And like you said, it truly takes time to forgive someone. But the Bible said if you don't forgive, he won't forgive you. And when you have the identity of Christ living in you, you have nothing but forgiveness in your heart.
Yeah.
And yes, we have to practice that. God tells us we have to practice all those things, self-control and things like that. But it's just, forgiveness brings healing to the heart. In my life, I had to forgive so many people, but after the feeling of me forgiving, it was nothing but healing in my life, like just healing of like how I felt. And knowing that when you don't forgive, you walk around with bitterness and you have so much hatred in your heart towards that person or things like that. And that doesn't feel good. I just imagine like some people that walk around here full of hatred because of things that people have done and still haven't experienced the feeling of forgiveness. And that's why it's the healing of all things, because our God, like, Man, we are not perfect. I just imagine how many times I go in my prayer room and I say this, and God's just like, But he loves me so much because of his mercy and his grace. And I was like, man, if you want to be like Jesus, you have to do those things.
Yeah.
Because he did that for us. And we didn't deserve anything at all. So, like, it takes time to forgive. You're not just going to forgive in a day. Some days going to hurt more than others, but you have to practice it. You have to forgive, and you will eventually feel the healing of it all. So
a big part of that too is like, you know, if you had a past relationship where you did get hurt, like you can't just only forgive in your new relationship and have tons of bitterness stored up from your old relationship too. Like, I think one thing that can help too is like, you know, if you see them in public, maybe say hi and have like a short, very base level conversation and like, you know, realize they're human. Like the relationship didn't work out, and that's fine. You know, like things don't always work out. It's not always, you know, life isn't always just rainbows and kisses and strawberries or whatever. Like, you know, things can fail. So
Sam's 3 favorite things.
That's true though.
But not holding, like, especially in friendships too, you know, like buddies are going to cross your back, brothers are going to cross your back, family is too, but forgiveness in family and friends is, you know, just as important as forgiveness in your marriage too, because you don't want to just build up these walls of, you know, grudges with anyone is a lot of work.
It is.
Like right now, I don't really have grudges with anyone, and like I have before, and it's just like I have to remember to not like this person all day. Like, what a waste of my thoughts. That's so dumb.
You look at her like, no.
Side eye.
and it's so important to know that, man. I stress this a lot, that the enemy is here to steal, kill, and destroy everyone. Yeah. Like, everyone is battling something. I know the decision that they made hurts, but, man, the enemy is trying to take us away from the gracious of love of God. And so you have to understand that when that person probably made that decision, it's probably been a habit of that person that you probably didn't even know, because the enemy is playing with his mind. Yeah. The enemy is telling him no one knows. The enemy loves for us to do things in the darkness. He loves those things so that we can hold bondage to that. And so I think the main thing is for forgiveness is praying for that person. That's the healing of it all. When you are willing to surrender and say, Lord, I'm going to pray for this person, that brings the best healing of all things. Because, like, I'm really talking about a person that probably hurt me for a year and a half or whatever you experience. And so praying is something important.
Yep, God is the only healer.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, even if you look at, like, when you get cut, you're like, oh, your body heals itself. Well, guess who designed that? Guess who's healing you? God, you know? Yeah. God is the only source of healing. So I think that's a big one. Just like the Sunday school answer of Jesus is always the answer.
Jesus. Here we go.
Next question.
How do you know you're ready for a relationship?
Okay. How do you I lost my voice that quick. How do you know you're ready for another relationship? I was reading in Genesis. I think when you know that you're ready for another relationship is when you master sin. That's so important, because God says in the Bible, when he was talking to Cain, that you look dejected. And he said, if you don't change your heart, sin will be crouching at your door, ready to control you. But I love the part of it when he says, but you can subdue it and be its master. And so I think when going into a relationship, you have to understand, is sin still controlling your actions, your decisions, and your thoughts? Or is the Holy Spirit leading you from your actions and your thoughts and things like that? Because you can go into a relationship full of desires that you want to fulfill in a relationship. And if you're going in that way, you're going for the wrong reason. Yeah. But if you're going in a relationship knowing that you have practice in your singleness stage of self-control, and God has gifted you wisdom, as the Bible says, from the mouth of God give knowledge and wisdom. So when you have gained all the wisdom, and it's so much more wisdom God has given to you, but I think that's the main point of, like, just going into a relationship. Have you mastered sin to control and be committed?
Yep. Yeah, I like Paul talks about it very vividly too, where he says, you know, we have to slay our sinful desires, and it's a really, like, vivid image that he portrays in 1 Corinthians, but I think it's a really good way to think about it. You know, like, we have to master this sin that we have, and we just take it and we just make it captive. You know, like, these desires, these are mine. And, like, I think in this day and age, even, like, the simple thing of eating 3 meals a day, Like,
Yeah.
we don't want to get like into gluttony where like we
Yeah.
can't even fast one meal.
Yeah.
Like, I know I tried to fast for the first time and I got through one meal and I was like, man, I was tripping. I was like, my stomach was like hurting. And I was like, man, like I need to take any of these desires that I have and like
Yeah.
slay them. And like, I'm not a married man, but I've heard it from a lot of married men that are like, your desires don't all of a sudden just become all completely fulfilled when you get married.
Yeah.
Like if you have these, you know, desires that you shouldn't have in a dating relationship, like you have to fix them. Like just when you get a ring and you get married, like those desires aren't just going to be magically like changed and healed.
Yeah.
Like you have to like, and you can still heal through those in marriage. Like it's never too late to like turn to Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, like you can always like keep pursuing good and keep changing and keep getting transformed, but like working on those things as soon as you can, like especially in singleness and like before you're married will be good, so
Yeah.
you can start off your marriage on a good foot, I think. But yeah, those desires, like it's not just gonna magically change when you're married. Your life isn't gonna just be like, I'm
Right.
married,
Right.
everything's better.
You have to
Yeah.
starve your desires.
Yeah.
You have to kill them,
Yeah.
and that's by starving them, and that's fasting and trusting that. So I truly believe what you just said.
Yeah, I talked about repeating themes in the Bible, and one of the huge ones was when people in the Bible had big decisions to make, like the big characters in the Bible, like Moses, Abraham, David, some of those guys. There was always fasting before they made
Yeah.
big decisions like that.
Yeah.
So I think it is important, and it's tough. And I'm saying it's important, and it's just right out of my own heart that I know it's hard, and I know that I need to do it too, but it's
Yeah.
not easy. But
Yeah.
you know, the things that aren't easy are oftentimes the things that pay off the most.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think we got one last question.
You think we can squeeze it in?
More.
What is the secret to commitment?
Ooh. Commitment. The secret to commitment in anything is, I truly believe, going all in. That's the secret to commitment. As with God, what He says to us, with surrender your will and pick up my cross every day. That's commitment.
Yeah.
Like you have to make that daily choice every day to be committed to the Word of God, be committed to being just like Jesus. And that's what takes you a long way. And time, trust, and I love the part of it is that being committed is going to be things that look good but not are for you.
Yeah.
When you're committed to something, you tend and cultivate that. So like if you're in a
Yeah.
relationship, as God was telling Adam, tend and cultivate this. Like that's commitment to that. Like nothing else matters. And even in that story, when you think about with Eve, like God gave them everything they needed, but the
Yeah.
tree looked it good. And that's the same thing with commitment, is that things are going to look good in your life and going to look good for that. You probably want to taste whatever that is. But if you are committed to whatever it is, that means self-discipline.
Yeah.
That's self-control. And God says practice that. That's just not something that we can just have.
Yeah.
You literally have to practice self-control and discipline. And because that what helps you, and that's the Holy Spirit. So
Yeah, I got a couple of thoughts. I just think like, you know, people talk about how like, you know, love is a feeling. Like
Yeah.
love is a daily choice and a
Absolutely.
commitment. Like
Yeah.
if you
Absolutely.
feel in love with someone, that's probably not love. That's probably lust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like love is
Yeah.
a really hard daily choice to make. Like you choose to love that person every day. And like in the marriage vows, it says, you know, like in sickness or disease, until death.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't say, yeah, until there's a minor inconvenience.
Right.
That I'm
right.
out. You know, that's
Yeah.
not what it says. Like
Uh-oh.
it's anything.
Yeah.
And I think there's some things that are really hard and they cause a lot of people to get divorced. Like my cousin's in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And the divorce rate for having a severely handicapped kid like that is like 91%.
Right.
And in my family, I have the example of, you know, my aunt and uncle are very happily married still. And it's
Yeah.
like you don't give up.
Yep.
You don't give
Yeah.
up on stuff like that. And like, you
Yeah.
know, there's going to be seasons in life that are terrible and crazy.
Mhm.
And like, you just have to face them together.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
you know, you're fired from a job at the same time and like a loss in your family. And then you crash your car.
Mhm.
And it's like, now you're walking home in the middle of winter in Minnesota. And, you know, your heart's ripped
Talking about
out
in the middle.
from all these bad things
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you leave, you know, like one of the
Yeah.
best things in your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, so I think like commitment, a lot of it is like trust too. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
and healing from past relationships goes a lot into it too,
Mhm.
because you can have bad things happen to you and like assume that's going to happen
Right.
again. Like you can assume, you know, well, I got left last time.
Yeah.
It's going to happen this time too.
Yeah.
You know, last time some dude texted her and she quit talking to me. Like that's going to happen again.
Yeah.
Like, you can't think about it like that. Like
Right.
there has to just be a lot of trust, and like also not being ashamed, and like, you know, like posting them is a little part of it too. Obviously we talked about like mediating that before, but also you can't be like ashamed to be with them because
Right.
like you're scared that you're gonna like lose out on different
Right.
options. Like
Yep.
Yeah.
this FOMO is huge in this generation,
It
but
is.
you're not missing out on anyone else when you get married. And like
Yeah.
when I look at FOMO, I think that you shouldn't fear missing out on these silly hangouts with your friends. You should fear missing out on your eternal salvation.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's
Right.
what you really should be scared of
Yeah.
missing. So
Yeah. I would also say a key component to setting or to commitment is like setting yourself up for success.
Yeah.
I mean, we touched on it already. Like, who are your friends? Who's your community? Like, where are you looking for your future spouse or relationship? You know, like, set yourself up well. Don't like set yourself up with someone who is seeking the Lord and has the same values as you and wants that commitment as well, and to reciprocate that authentically, like you want in return. You know. So.
for
Are
sure.
you committed to, I think it comes to is this as well, are you committed to the Lord even if you don't get what you want? Because a
Right.
lot of times we want someone in our life, and the only way that sometimes we want someone in our life, and without them we feel like we can't get close to God.
Yeah.
And sometimes you try to drag that person with you, and sometimes you miss the opportunity of that all. And so I think just commitment, knowing this too, is that commitment, as Ecclesiastes says, like back to back. Like you fight the world together and you fight with the kingdom. Like you're doing the kingdom work, and that's what truly matters at all times. But
Yeah.
commitment is so important. It's sometimes hard because you have to fight your mind.
Yeah.
Your mind
Yeah.
wants something else every time. Your mind is fighting the spirit.
Yeah.
And you have to have the self-discipline enough from reading your word and taking that stand and saying, no, I can't let this take me away from what God has for me.
Yeah.
Because my plan is not better than God's plan. We are created in his image. Just imagine how beautiful we are because he created us, not ourselves. And so he has the author of it all. So when you trust that and you are committed to God, everything else becomes more easy because you know that he has it written for you. So
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in and listening, even though you have to
Yeah, I was gonna say a different
because you came
choice.
to Epic. It was a great episode. If you have more relationship questions,
yeah.
you know who to talk to.
Yeah, there you go.
The people that are under this spotlight right now.
Yes, two spotlights.
Yeah, two
And-
spotlights.
Anybody in the church, I promise you they'll talk to you. So remember that. And keep smiling. Look at everybody smiling. There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. And make sure you don't tip Rochelle's nice microphones over either
Okay.
when you stand up because
Have you done that?
no, not me. Did you do that?
I don't know.
I don't know.